My trip to Zambia lasted for 2 weeks, and yet it left me with a lifetime of memories and has taught me so many incredible lessons. It's always easy to roll your eyes when someone comes back from their travels and claims to have gained everlasting insight and a deeper understanding of life. And up until a few months ago, I would have done the same. But overused platitudes aside, this trip has allowed me to escape the bubble that I was stuck in and open up my mind to a world beyond my own, and it pushed me to be a part of experiences beyond my wildest imagination. With that degree of genuine enjoyment and astonishing quantity of realizations, it becomes difficult to choose one single take-home message. But there are definitely a few that will stick with me for quite some time. What I think truly hit the hardest was what I discovered from volunteering in a small medical clinic that was terribly understaffed and underfunded. It can apply to anything from global health to everyday personal life, but what is absolutely crucial is to not take anything for granted. Period. I understand the cliched nature of the sentence, and I definitely don't claim the phrase as my own work, but I think hearing the words and understanding them is a completely different concept. A second, slightly less profound message is to be fearless. For me, that was not the whitewater rafting trip or the helicopter ride, but the simple fact that I did those activities alone. That leads into my third main message, which is to never let an opportunity pass you by, no matter how terrifying. And while it may have been terrifying on the way to the adventures alone, I was exceedingly grateful that I decided to do them anyway after I was done. While the entire trip was provoking and stunning, one of the most exhilarating and life-altering moments came with the trip to see one of the 7 natural wonders of the world, Victoria Falls. This portion of my trip very literally changed my perspective as I got to witness this wonder for the first time while standing on the very edge of it. Myself and 2 very good friends went on a trip to Angel's Pool, a naturally forming pool of water right on the very edge of an extremely long fall. We were taken on a boat to a strip of land where we could undress down to our swimsuits. This led to a very long introduction from one of the guides as I stood there ankle deep in mud and praying my bones wouldn't break from the intensity of my shivering. While wintertime in Africa isn't too horrendous, experiencing it at 9 a.m. from the edge of a waterfall in nothing but a bikini, now that was a little bit more challenging. When we finally crept our way over to the edge, which took some time as every surface I seemed to step on was slippery and determined to send me careening off the edge, we were able to jump into the pool, just when I thought I couldn't get any colder. This was all insignificant from the moment the tour guide dragged me over to the edge, and with my nails digging into his arms, I leaned over and stared down into the abyss. Even now, after talking about it and looking back on that moment for a few weeks, it still doesn't seem real. The feeling just simply can't be put into words. Zambia is a very large and beautiful country, but I was only really able to fully explore Livingston, the city near the volunteer house. Situated on the southern tip of Zambia, it is only about 15 minutes away from Victoria Falls, which makes it extremely attractive to tourists. That being said, there were only a few instances where I saw large groups of them, and the majority of the time I spent being the minority, surrounded by locals. I was scared at first to be in a foreign country on the other side of the world where I looked different and didn't speak the language, but this fear was quickly calmed when I discovered that the people there are extremely nice and polite. It is not uncommon for random people on the street to come up to you, introduce themselves, and then ask a multitude of questions, some of which can be very personal. It is important to understand these cultural differences when working in the medical field and shaping healthcare. Every individual is different in the kind of care that they both require and the kind that they desire. This global health perspective was vital in how I reacted to different situations at the clinic and how I was able to help by hearing their needs and not offering up my own Americanized advice on how things, quote unquote, should be done. One example of this was the simple fact that I had to learn to abide by African time. While Zambia is about 9 hours ahead of San Diego, this isn't what I'm referencing. A major theme in my trip was becoming accustomed to the easygoing demeanor that was intrinsic in their society. Where we in the US adhere to appointments and meetings to the very minute, things are vastly different in Zambia. When I was told to report to my clinic at 8 a.m., Most of the doctors and even the patients didn't really start showing up until 9:30 or 10. This didn't worry me too much. What really astonished me, though, was a few days later. I was happy to be running late and was only able to arrive by 9:15. Now here in the States, if I were to show up to my hospital placement even 2 minutes late, I would be dealing with the repercussions for the rest of my life. With this in mind, I timidly made my way to the front desk, and instead of the aggressive and accusatory, "Where were you?" I was expecting, I instead received a happy, "Good morning." This made me realize that time is truly a social construct, and when providing care in those societies, it is important to remember to account for the cultural differences when setting appointments or discussing the time of day that a medication should be taken. Even after I came to terms with the fact that the local culture dearly valued their happy-go-lucky attitude, it was still troublesome to accept some of the mind-boggling events that took place. In one instance, this understanding did very little to lessen my infuriation at how a case was handled. When I arrived around 9:30, truly embracing the concept of African time and sleeping in, there was a patient lying on the ground that no one seemed to be paying any attention to. When I asked the doctor about the situation, he shrugged and simply said that the patient had had a seizure and went back to his conversation with the nurse about what I assume had nothing to do with any plan of care or course of treatment. After a while, there was still no change in the situation. I asked a nurse what was being done, and she said that an ambulance had been called. I later found out that this call was made about an hour ago. After sitting and waiting, a van arrived. This still made no difference as the driver began talking and most likely flirting with the secretary at the front desk. See, this is something that I'm definitely not used to, because back here in the US, it's very often that whenever there's an emergent situation, there's ambulances speeding their way through traffic into the emergency room bay, lights flashing, alarms blaring, even if it is just to take care of a young freshman who has had 12 too many drinks. Most injuries and health concerns are taken care of right away, and that isn't accounting for situations as serious as assessing an individual after a seizure where they had not regained consciousness and may or may not have hit their head on the way down to the floor. What seemed like centuries later, the man was on a gurney in the trunk of the van with myself holding onto that gurney as well as the handle, since neither myself, the patient, nor the gurney itself was tied down to anything while we were swerving left and right through traffic and over potholes. The entire experience had me frustrated because my chosen field of nursing is emergency and trauma situations. It's very fast-paced and things get done quickly. When faced with a medical staff that has no desire to take on a hurried appearance, it can be very difficult to accept what is going on and not impose your own views on how things should be done. This, of course, was not an isolated incident, and I'm sure that those kind of events transpire every single day with the same reaction. Furthermore, this is not something native to Zambia. In countries all over the world, the way they do healthcare can be strikingly different, and having a global health perspective can help you adjust your own standard of care to better suit the needs of the population that you are helping. What was remarkably different about Zambia was the aforementioned laid-back attitude. When interacting with anyone, taxi driver to grocery clerk, it was crucial to introduce yourself first and at the very least ask them how their day was. This was something that took me a very long time to become accustomed to, and my constant sense of urgency was something that landed me in hot water more than once. With everyone being so mellow and carefree, any haste was frowned upon. This was a complete 180 from the brisk, bustling, and somewhat impatient society that we oftentimes find ourselves in. Being forced to slow down allowed me to actually enjoy more aspects of daily life, even if it was as simple as running errands and going grocery shopping. I'll admit, it is difficult at first to release the urge to get things done quickly and adhere to a timetable. But once you do, you can step back and realize that there's a lot more to life than the hands on a watch and a to-do list. It is undeniably true when it's said that wherever you go becomes a part of you somehow. Because even though deep down I still get a little bit stressed when I'm running late, I still stop and enjoy a cup of coffee before I go.
Honey, we got a moon that's full and a dance floor made of grass. Your blue eyes make me wanna Make this evening last. Put on an old song, put on that new dress. Tomorrow's coming, but it ain't here yet. We got stars outside, just you and I got this feeling rising through the ceiling, singing, ooh, ooh, darling, you got me feeling alright. Let me show you I was made to hold you. So lose your shoes and dance with me, dance with me, dance with me tonight. Dance with me tonight. We can just forget the deadlines, leave them in the 9 to 5. Let's not waste a night like this.